The Plush Creatures Ruined My Life by Danilobs31. Dr. Lopez said it would be good for me to write a diary. I hope this helps, because everything is a mess and I don't know what to do anymore. My father used to say that there is no worse feeling than imagining how things could have been if you had done something you didn't do. And today, I couldn't agree more with him. That applies to missed opportunities, but also to terrible things. Things that could have been avoided if evil had been cut off at the root. Since Martha left with Emmeth, the strange things happening in this house have only gotten worse. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my mind because of everything that happened. But it's all because of those damned plush toys. I remember the day the first one appeared. Since I was unemployed, I had plenty of free time to pick Emmeth up from school every day, which was great because before, Martha had to rush to pick him up during her lunch break since she worked closer to home and the school. That day, I had just arrived home with him and he wanted to run, as usual, straight to the TV, a habit I was trying to break. I made him go take a bath while I went to his room to find him some clothes to wear. That's when I saw it, on his bed. At first, it startled me. For an instant, it looked like some strange animal lying on the bed. But I quickly realized it was just a plush toy. The relief, however, didn't last long. The closer I got, and the more I examined the object, the weirder it became. It looked like a little plush cow. It had a round body with strange, long, dangling legs like cords. Its horns were also very long, the same size as its head, and its eyes were misaligned, one higher than the other. But the strangest thing was what it had on its head between the horns and all down its back. They looked like eggs. Oval little plush balls sewn in clusters, individually harmless, but grouped that way they looked like a tick infestation. It was disturbing. And what was that even supposed to represent? Was it some cartoon character? The more I stared at that thing, the more unsettling it became. Then Emmeth surprised me, stepping out of the bath wrapped in a towel. "What's that, Dad?" He ran toward the plush toy, excited. "Where did this come from, son?" I asked, wondering who could have given him such an ugly, distasteful gift. "I don't know, Dad. It wasn't there when I left." That wasn't possible. Martha had taken him to school before going to work, and I had been home the whole day. There was no way anyone could have put it there in the meantime. That night, I asked my wife about it, and she didn't give it much thought. She said maybe some uncle had given it to him, and he'd forgotten. Forgotten? How could he forget something like that? The thing was bizarre. But Martha didn't seem to have time to deal with it. Always busy, always worried about hospital matters. At that time, I felt an urgent need to find a job to ease her burden. Things only got worse from there. Other plush toys started showing up. A red spider with very long legs, a yellow ball with bulging eyes and a toothy grin, a three-legged frog with a giant tongue that wrapped around its body. and several others. We asked my parents, Martha's parents, our siblings, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and even Emmett himself. But no one had given him those strange plush toys. The worst part was that, at first, Emmett liked them. We thought about throwing them away, but the boy went crazy when we suggested it. We inspected the toys, and they didn't seem dangerous. Sometimes it all seemed like an exaggeration on our part. In the end, we let him keep them. After all, ugly or weird stuffed animals aren't exactly new, and some even become popular with kids. Within a month, the house was already full of strange plush toys. I don't know how we didn't realize how weird that was at the time, but they kept appearing little by little, one at a time. Sometimes I even suspected that Martha was trying to play a prank on me, and maybe she thought the same of me. But the truth is, we had so many other things to worry about. Martha always rushing with work at the hospital, and me job hunting. Every day, while Emmett was at school, I went around dropping off resumes and attending job interviews. The situation with the plush toys only really caught our attention again when things started getting stranger. There were always plush toys scattered around the house, and when we complained to Emmett, it was always the same answer. "Emmett, I told you not to leave these toys all over the living room," I scolded him, always stern. "I know, Dad," he'd say, picking them up. "I put them in the toy chest, but they keep coming out." We thought it was just a childish excuse for his own mess. Until Leonore's birthday. Leonore was the daughter of an old friend of ours. Emmett was very excited to go. But me? I don't know. I wasn't in the mood for long social interactions. Besides, after a full day of job interviews, I was exhausted. So I told them they could go, and I stayed home. Martha had left the house almost completely tidy before leaving, but there were still some plush toys in the living room, so I put them in Emmett's toy chest with the others and went back to the living room. I grabbed a beer, some snacks, and watched TV. At some point, I went to get another beer. As I stood up, turning toward the kitchen, there it was, on the floor. That damned long-legged cow. A primal feeling of fear gripped me. Didn't I just put you away, I thought. I picked it up from the floor, shrugging it off, thinking maybe I'd forgotten that one. But before I reached the bedroom, something crossed my mind. Didn't this cow have little balls all over its head? I stopped for a moment. I couldn't be mistaken. That thing was the first one. I remembered it clearly. It had those many plush balls sewn all over its head and back. Balls that looked like eggs, or a horrifying tick infestation. I wondered if Martha had cut those off. Without them, it was certainly less sinister, though still too long-legged and crooked-faced. I kept walking toward the room, and when I turned on the light, my blood ran cold. The chest was open. It couldn't be. I was sure I had closed it. And not just that, there were other plush toys scattered on the floor. No way I left it like that. That night, not only did I put all the plush toys back in the chest, but I also placed a heavy box full of books on top. Terrible thoughts crossed my mind. Maybe I was imagining things, but just to be sure, I turned on all the lights in the house and searched every closet, under every bed, every place someone could be hiding. Someone who could be responsible for that sick joke. But I found nothing. Just more plush toys. One of them, stuck under Emmeth's wardrobe, seemed caught on something. Shining my phone's flashlight into the narrow space, all I could see was a long, red, furry arm coming from behind the wardrobe. It must have been wedged between the furniture and the wall. I left it alone. I remember that after that night, everything went downhill. Emmett started waking up at night, screaming. Nightmares. At first sporadically, but soon it became the norm. Even when he slept in our bed, he always woke up frightened. Soon after, he got sick. At first it seemed like a normal cold. Fever, headaches, body aches. But it wouldn't go away. We had to take him to the doctor multiple times. No doctor could say exactly what it was. Each one gave a different explanation, leading to more treatments, more medications, more expenses. And he stayed sick. With those extra expenses, Martha had to take double shifts at the hospital. So I took care of Emmett and the house alone, which might not have been a problem under other circumstances, but it was proving to be a challenge. Emmett was acting stranger and stranger. No appetite, no energy, and always surrounded by those damned plush things. I heard him whispering to them, talking. But when I got close, he stopped. When I asked, he pretended not to know what I was talking about. Once, I heard it. I'm sure I did. Emmett wasn't talking alone. There was a second voice with him in the room. A hoarse voice, like someone who smokes too many packs of cigarettes. Just for an instant, I couldn't understand the words. I approached slowly, on tiptoe, step by step. The door was ajar. I pushed it carefully, barely touching it. Then I saw... Damn it, I saw! I am not crazy! Emmett was curled up in the sheets, on the bed as always. But he didn't look weak like usual. Around him, all the damned plush toys were standing. They had no skeleton or joints. They were soft. There was no way they could be standing like that. But that wasn't the worst part. Above him, that damned cow. He was pressing its round body to his face, with his lips puckered. It's as if he was... It's hard to even admit this. It was as if it was breastfeeding him. It lasted a second. I couldn't bear it. I had to do something. When I suddenly burst into the room, all the plush toys were back in their usual spots. Now fallen. Inanimate. He widened his eyes in shock. I I tore that damned cow from his hands and stormed to the kitchen. He followed me screaming, no longer looking sick, completely frantic. I had to put an end to it. Maybe it was difficult. For someone else, maybe. Looking at that situation from outside, I could just look like a cruel father taking away his sick child's favorite toy. But I know what I saw. And a father has to do what a father has to do. I grabbed a knife from the drawer and plunged it deep into that plush toy, slicing its round belly open from top to bottom. Emmett cried, screamed. It was as if he himself was feeling the cut. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. From the gutted belly of the thing spilled out a pile of white cotton stuffing. But not just that. Misshapen lumps of fleshy tubes and sticky entrails spread across the floor. They looked like kidneys, livers, intestines, but I couldn't be sure. Quickly, the kitchen floor, the knife, the toy, everything was drenched in blood as if I had just killed a living animal. I dropped everything, grabbed Emmett in my arms, still crying, and ran to the living room. In shock, I pressed him against my chest in a protective embrace, even as he thrashed around. I don't know how many hours I stayed there in the armchair. Eventually, he calmed down and fell asleep in my arms. His body burned with fever. When his mother finally came home, she said the neighbor had called her, saying she heard screams and desperate crying. That she tried to call me, but I didn't answer. So she left work early, worried. I laid the boy asleep on the couch and told her she needed to see something. I didn't know how to explain, didn't know where to begin. All I could do was lead her to the kitchen, imagining that when she saw the scene, full of blood and entrails, she'd believe me. To my surprise, that wasn't what happened. When we got to the kitchen, the plush cow was still there on the floor next to the knife, its belly open, stuffing everywhere, but there was no blood, no entrails. Instead, a long pink felt tube and other equally cartoonish organs, all made of felt and cotton. After that, of course, Martha, who already thought I was losing my mind, was certain of it. And then the fights intensified. We weren't sleeping. We were in debt. We were going through a very difficult time with Emmett. And obviously, there was something in all of this that only I could see. A whole month of arguments and fights led to the moment Martha couldn't take it anymore. She asked for a divorce and went to live with her parents until she found a place of her own. And of course, she took Emmett with her. At the time, I thought maybe it was for the best. Maybe the boy, cared for by her and his grandparents, would be better off than with me. The day they left, Martha packed only clothes and personal items. Emmett begged to take all the plush toys, but Martha refused. She said they'd come back for the rest later. He reluctantly agreed. It wasn't just anger in his eyes, it was fear. When everything was ready, Emmeth came to say goodbye to me. His mother was waiting in the car. He hugged me as tight as he could. I hugged him back, kneeling down to his height, holding him as if I'd never let go. I love my son, and that's exactly why I was doing this. As painful as it was, leaving would be the best for him. But before letting go, in the very last second, he whispered in my ear, "They said they wouldn't hurt you and Mom as long as I obeyed." He whispered in a sad, confessional tone. I could only widen my eyes, and before I could ask anything, Martha honked from the car, calling him. He hurried away. I didn't go inside right away. I stood there, watching Martha's car shrink into the horizon until it disappeared. Then I stayed outside. First, I told myself I needed some air, then that I wanted to see the sunset. The truth is, I was afraid to go back into my own house. At some point, I convinced myself it was ridiculous, and I went in. I didn't have dinner that night. I just grabbed the Jack Daniels bottle from the shelf and sat near the door, on the floor, staring at the hallway leading to Emmeth's room. His words echoed in my head. The images of that day, when I silently entered his room, haunted me. Slowly, things began to make sense. Whatever he was doing because he believed it was protecting us. That night, I couldn't move from there. I drank until I passed out, and it was just the first time. After Emmeth left, I placed several heavy things on top of the plush toy chest and kept his room locked. No more plush creatures appeared around the house, but that didn't make my nights more peaceful. In the following days, I couldn't sleep sober anymore. The agonizing feeling of thousands of eyes on me, even though I hadn't seen any more plush toys. So every night, I drank myself unconscious. I ate less and less. The feeling of being watched was constant, as if something was staring at me all the time, through doors and walls. Sometimes I was sure I could hear banging inside Emmeth's room. Sometimes knocking at my own bedroom door. A week had passed since Martha left. I couldn't take it anymore. I was worn out, weakened. I had already lost everything. I thought, at that point, it didn't matter what happened. So I did what I had to do. I opened the room. Everything was there just as I had left it. The chest closed, the heavy box on top. When I opened it, they were there. All the plush creatures were inside. For an instant, it seemed like everything I'd been feeling was just in my head. But I wasn't going back. I was done. It would end there once and for all. I grabbed the scissors and started cutting the toys apart. One by one, I slit their bodies open, chopped off their heads, ripped out their limbs. My controlled action slowly turned into a frenzied rage. One by one, all of them were gutted, beheaded, dismembered. Inside each of their bodies there were viscera, small, caricatured representations of hearts, lungs, intestines, all made of felt, plush, and cotton. Who makes plush toys with that level of grotesque detail? In the end, I gathered the pile of fabric and stuffing, the result of my slaughter, put it all in a sack and took it to the yard. I poured gasoline, struck a match, and lit it. Within seconds, the source of my torment for the past months was burning in a bonfire. I must admit I expected the worst. I expected something to scream, protest, move. But nothing happened. The pile of plush, cotton, and felt burned. Silent, impassive. At that point, it really seemed like my torment was over. I went back inside relieved, as if I'd lifted a huge weight off of my shoulders. I couldn't understand. How could I not have done that sooner? How could I have let it get that far? Those things, somehow they made people accept them, as if they could hide their strangeness behind a veil of normality. Somehow, I had seen beyond that. If I didn't, I might still be ignoring the creatures looking for other explanations. That night, I didn't drink. For the first time in a while, I slept peacefully. No feeling of being watched, no sounds, no knocking at the door. The next day, I woke up renewed. A new man, invigorated, free. I felt free from a curse. I went back to job hunting, attended some really promising interviews the next day. That was when I also started seeing Dr. Lopez. Martha had recommended her when she began to think I was losing my mind, but I dismissed it. Now, with things improving, I felt like I wanted to heal, to fully recover, no matter the cost. So I agreed to therapy. I had a hard time telling her everything that really happened. I knew she couldn't tell anyone and that she couldn't help me unless I was honest. But I couldn't speak. So she suggested I write everything down in the form of a diary. At that moment, I felt like I had fixed my life, and that everything would get better. I still didn't know that, although I had acted too late. The following week, I was finally hired by a company. It's a pharmaceutical company. I was basically going to work as a salesman. The salary was good and there was commission. I couldn't have been happier. Only if my wife and son were at home, waiting for me. One thing at a time, I thought to myself, trying to stay optimistic. When I got home, it was raining heavily. I parked the car and ran inside, getting soaked in the process. As I entered, carefree, I took off my tie and opened a beer to celebrate. That's when I heard it. It sounded like something heavy being dragged on the floor. Short, abrupt. I couldn't tell where it came from. Cautiously, I set my beer down and walked slowly, avoiding making noise. Step after step. Walking through the house. Alert, waiting to hear it again. A chill ran up my spine. Suddenly, all those feelings returned. I felt like I was being watched from all sides, several eyes fixed on me. This time it didn't seem to come from Emmeth's room, but from the whole house. It felt like at any moment, from anywhere, one of those damned stuffed animals could appear. But I looked around in torment and saw nothing. I kept walking towards Emmeth's room. Then it happened again. The shrill sound of something dragging. This time I was sure it was the wardrobe. I approached the door. I heard more noises, this time faint ones, like things falling onto the floor of the room. By then my mouth was dry. I was sweating cold. I didn't know what I was about to see, but I wasn't ready. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I came back to the room. The noises inside were still going. I took a deep breath, gripped the handle of the knife tight, and opened. As soon as I opened the door, the noise stopped. I hurriedly switched on the light. I couldn't believe it. All over the floor of the room, dozens of stuffed animals scattered everywhere, many of them in different colors, sizes, and shapes. All strange, wrong, bizarre. Perhaps more than the number I had burned. The spot with the most was the wardrobe. The bottom part of the wardrobe was crammed with stuffed creatures, squashed against each other as if someone had shoved them in there. On top of the furniture, a pile of stuffed creatures from which one or another would occasionally fall, rolling onto the floor. The wardrobe seemed to tremble. Another plush fell from above. I trembled, stunned. If I ever had doubts, this was the profane materialization of all of them. Those things were clearly coming from behind the wardrobe. I carefully approached. 2 more fell from on top of the furniture. I struck out with the knife and reflex, startled. The wardrobe would move now and then, as if something behind it was trying to push it forward. In a desperate and sudden move, I grabbed the side of the empty piece of furniture and pulled with all my strength. It wasn't a large piece, and it was light. Quickly, it tipped over under its own weight, falling forward. I raised the knife in a furious motion, teeth clenched, ready to fight. But soon my aggressive stance dissolved into a cloud of stupefaction. A cold wave swept over my body. My arms and legs buckled. The knife slipped from my hand. Nothing could have prepared me for that. On the wooden wall, a large tear in the wallpaper revealed a slit almost a meter wide. From inside the walls, a shapeless mass of stuffed creatures, completely jammed together, crushed against one another. Hundreds of them. So many it was clear the pressure they put on the wall. The wall boards cracked with loud sounds that seemed like pounding. Eventually, one of them was spat out with force. I couldn't move. Fear paralyzed me. Gradually, the whole house's walls groaned. How many of these things were in the house, inside the walls? Subtly, the entire house seemed to twist under the pressure, almost as if the walls were breathing. I quickly turned when I heard a noise near the door. That definitely hadn't been there before. Under the bed, a pair of very long red arms stretched from the bed to near the door. I recognized that arm. It was the same arm I had seen under the wardrobe the other day, but it looked bigger now, much longer. And there was something else. Little lumps. At the beginning of the arm near the bed, I could see several lumps like plush eggs, sewn into various parts of the arm. Something resembling a dreadful infestation of ticks. Desperate, I bent down to grab the knife. For a second, that one single second, I took my eyes away. I heard the terrifying sound of the door closing. I let out a guttural sound of terror when I lifted my head, only to see the door shut, one of the long red arms that came from under the bed now gripping the doorknob. I felt the whole house tremble again, looking around, when something grabbed my leg. It was a strange stuffed octopus, covered in googly eyes all over. I shook my leg desperately, but that was only the start of a greater chain reaction. Little by little, the other stuffed things began to stand up. Slowly, their movements unnatural, as if pulled by invisible marionette strings. The thing on my leg began to move, and in a desperate act, I stabbed it with a knife. When I did, I felt the searing pain spread through my own leg. The whole house seemed to tremble, and I could hear a deep hiss coming from under the bed, like a mix of a snake's hiss and a car engine rumbling. By inadvertently attacking the creature clinging to my leg, the knife pierced through its tentacle and into me. The creature let go, and blood spread plentifully across the floor. I couldn't tell if that blood was only mine or like when I tore the first plush. The bed scraped, as if something large and massive was thrashing underneath it. More stuffed toys fell from the slit. The things, now upright, crawled slowly toward me. The only possible way out I saw was the bedroom window. I imagined maybe I could break through it if I threw myself with enough force, but I didn't know if I'd make it before those things reached me. I didn't have much left to lose. Momentarily regaining control, I ran toward the window, my heart suddenly pounding hard in my chest. The things crawling toward me suddenly leapt onto me. I struggled in full sprint, slapping and hitting myself, afraid of stabbing myself again. I just closed my eyes and ran, thrashing and slapping, trying to get rid of all those miserable creatures. But before the expected crash through the window, I felt something even stronger wrap around my ankle. Before I could even look, I felt the tension of a rope pulled taut, and I simply fell, being dragged across the floor. I twisted my body, still being dragged, in a quick, desperate motion, and in between screams of terror, I struck several blows with the knife at whatever held my leg. I felt the pain of the knife piercing my own flesh again and again. But quickly, that enormous hand let go of me. I could hear again the sound of that hiss mixed with a car engine. Then finally I opened my eyes as I tried clumsily to crawl away, still lying on the floor. What I saw under the bed was not from this world. The creature must have been the size of a 7 or 8-year-old child, but its long cord-like arms stretched out in coils, wrapping around and around under the bed, covered entirely in short red fur. Its 8 eyes were milky and yellowed like a corpse's. Its twisted mouth, in a momentary scream of pain, had no lips. It was just a circular hole in the middle of its face, full of layers upon layers of sharp teeth that went down its throat. On its back, hundreds of white eggs of different sizes stuck to its body with a kind of dried yellowish sap. That thing was not made of plush. And when I finally managed to get up, I saw that none of the other things were either. The creatures seemed to feel pain along with the monster under the bed, and they all froze, letting out a shriek of agony in unison. Those things, they weren't the same as a second before. There was no plush, fabric, felt, or cotton, only flesh, hide, scaly skins dripping with slippery mucus, paws, tentacles, deformed faces with too many or too few eyes, twisted mouths full of needle-like teeth. The very slit in the wall wasn't a hole in the wood stuffed with plush toys. It was a bulbous, membranous thing, full of skin and secretions dripping like an open gash into something alive, from where those infernal creatures sprouted. All of it lasted just a moment. The next second, all the horror had been replaced by silky synthetic fabrics and vibrant colors. All the creatures went back to being stuffed toys. Or I went back to seeing them as such. But I could never unsee what I had just seen. Still, disoriented and limping, I charged now toward the door. The creature under the bed had withdrawn its hand when I struck it, leaving the door free. The infernal army of stuffed beings crawled after me, but I had gained a good lead. I opened the door, desperate. I ran like never before in my life, the searing pain in my leg threatening to bring me down with each step. Still, I ran. I could hear the mass of creatures piling up in the hallway, knocking things over along the way. In the distance, I heard what must have been Emmeth's bed being hurled aside. I didn't look back. As soon as I reached the yard, I shut the door behind me quickly, holding the handle tight as several things banged against it from the other side. I pulled a chair nearby and used it to jam the door shut. It wouldn't last forever. Confusion overwhelmed my mind. Now, still, the pain in my leg doubled, spreading everywhere. I needed to do something. I looked around desperately. Then, I saw it. There, in the yard, next to a pile of ashes, a nearly full can of gasoline, and the matches. I didn't think twice. I can't say if what I did really killed all of them. Maybe some managed to escape, but those that were inside the walls surely burned along with the house. At least, until now, here, before the massive fire, I haven't seen anything come out. It's already dawn, and in the distance I hear the sounds of fire truck sirens. I think that's enough. I don't know what Dr. Lopez will say about this account. I hope she can help me. Or commit me, I don't know. I just want things to go back to the way they were before.